masters, masters, masters of change.
Hello there. Welcome to Masters of Change. My name is Kim Cunio, and I'm the head of music at the Australian National University. And I'm here with my good friend Charlie Hogg, and Charlie is the director of the Brahma Kumaris in Australia. Welcome again, Charlie.
Thanks, Kim.
Well, Charlie, we've been having some wonderful conversations on the theme of balance. And isn't it interesting how it's a small topic, but it's a large topic, and really that's the whole of spirituality, isn't it? You can say it in a sentence, but it's a lifetime of work.
It is, isn't it? And balance is like the outcome of spirituality, isn't it? It's sort of one of the ways we can tell a spiritual person when there's balance in their life.
You know, that's a very interesting thing. I'd like you to describe just an incognito spiritual person in this world to me.
You know, Kim, the way they will appear is they'll be calm, probably won't speak a lot, but wherever they sit, you know how sometimes people sit, you just get a good energy from them. They won't be pushing themselves forward, but if they're asked to do something, they'll be very cooperative, very kind, very loving. In a way, they prioritize sort of who they are over what they do in life, you know, because they're just aware of themselves, so they just carry that vibration as they move around. And, you know, when you're in the company of such people, I've found personally, they can be a little bit of a mirror, but in a good way, where you can sort of see how I could perhaps improve some ways, not to feel lesser than, but you know, they almost sort of inspire you to perhaps know yourself more and be more, you know, express that self-awareness in my behaviour and action.
Charlie, I think that's a beautiful definition of a spiritual life, and it sounds like all of us can be that spiritual person. And that's really what you're telling us each time we come together, is that no matter who we are, no matter what our job, no matter what our stage in life, no matter how much we've suffered, because we all suffer, we can be that spiritual person. Is that right?
That's so right, Kim. And I think a lot of what we're saying is that, you know, spirituality doesn't mean you have to live in an ashram or a spiritual place. You have to wear certain clothes, and it's more about, you know, the mindset and who you are than the sort of the trappings of religion, if I can say. And I think what a lot of us, a lot listening, really want is they love their family, enjoy their job often, but to deal with the challenges, you know, would love a more inner strength. And spirituality sort of enables me to live in this challenging world and manage it, manage all the stuff that comes my way with wisdom and experimentation to improve my responses to what's happening around me.
It sounds like spiritual people, and that's all of us, maybe they get good at balancing things that for other people don't balance so easily. Would that be one of the things to come back to our theme of these episodes?
I think it does, Kim, because I think that in a way, the more you sort of, when you meditate, it's almost like during the day you're out, you're engaged, and when you meditate you withdraw to this point of detachment in a sense, and in that objectivity you can sort of see yourself and see the big picture, and so you can sort of keep monitoring your balance. You don't get too extremist in a behaviour or a perspective, because unfortunately today a lot is extremist behaviour.
Yes, it's like we're told we have to be an absolute in this world, you know, like, and we hear this phrase in the news, if we watch the news, identity politics. We get caught by our identity, and then it becomes political. So whoever I am suddenly becomes a source often of suffering for us, which is very sad.
It is sad, isn't it? And it's amazing when you were saying that, because identity politics is a huge thing in this world, isn't it? But, you know, and if we look at the world. I mean, how many identities could we identify with if I see myself as a temporary body? You know, your gender and your culture and your religion and your profession and your education. And yet, ultimately, the original identity is similar to all of us. Who am I? I am a peaceful soul. That's my permanent identity. This is the changing identity. And when I attach myself to it, and then somebody else says, well, I don't agree with something, we take it very personally. My ego is offended. But everyone has a right to express what they want to. But because I attach myself to a limited identity, if someone praises me, I get high. If someone criticizes, I get... sometimes, people, in this world, a lot of... it's not so easy, I think, for men and women, but it seems like men are even struggling more in this world. That may be a generalization, but when I hear it, I think of, when I hear that, I think, don't really identify with being a man so much as a soul. I can learn from it, but I don't take sorrow when people say, oh, men are like this, or, we take... Often when people generalize about a particular group or a culture or religion, and we identify with it, we'll take sorrow from it.
Oh, Charlie, that's really inspiring to me. It just says that all of us should go within a little bit and think who we really are.
Yeah.
So today's episode is about balancing two things that are both beautiful, but yet maybe it's more beautiful if we get them right. It's love and detachment. Can I say them again? Because I love them both, but sometimes I go, how do we get this right? How do we balance love with detachment?
Yeah. And it's probably one of the ultimate signs of wisdom when you do. But it's interesting, I think everyone loves love. But detachment, I think people sort of wriggle in their chair a bit. Because I think it's the most misunderstood word out of all the virtues, I would say, Kim, because I think so many... in English, at least, it inspires the feelings of aloofness, disconnection, a lack of empathy, a lack of care, cut off. There's a whole lot of sort of adjectives. But actually, in my experience, detachment protects my ability to love. You need them together, because when you're detached, you can love someone when they're good. But when their mood is off and that, you can still love them because you're not so influenced. The more you're attached, you are affected, and so you can't sustain love. And I would say, sometimes I give the example that who is the most loving in the world? It's God, most people would say. Maybe not everyone, but we would. But who's the most detached?
God.
It's God. So he can remain constantly loving because he's complete. And to me, the way I define detachment for myself is to be so loving, so caring, so close, open communication, but uninfluenced by. Because our addiction is to be influenced by everything, which spiritually we often say that's the way to measure my body conscious ego or my impurity, by how much people's behavior, people's words, situations, atmosphere disturb my mind, that I suck it in. The more I suck it in, the more actually I'm influenced. That's sort of my weakness.
Yes. It's like, look at me, I'm being a good person because I'm taking sorrow.
Yeah.
And every day I'm getting a little bit more miserable, and then inevitably I lash out.
Yes.
In order to feel better, and then I've set the reset switch, and then it all starts again.
Yeah.
I get it. There's also something about love, we have conditional love and non-conditional love.
Yeah.
But it seems like no matter how hard we try, love inevitably comes to the conditional state unless we're detached. Is that your experience?
It's so true, Kim, Sometimes I think love today is like a tap that you turn on and off. I'll love you, but you have the conditions. You have to do what I like. You have to behave according to my rules, So is that really love, It is love, but I sometimes think it's a low grade of love that doesn't really quench the soul. And sometimes I think there is a lot of love in life, but sometimes it's conditional. Sometimes it's selfish in the sense, and that's not conscious. You know, it's a lot of people feel so empty. All they can think about is you loving me. They don't see it's this wonderful exchange. And sometimes I think there's a lot of superficial love today too, because the whole notion of romantic love is a very interesting thing, because it's sort of, it only lasts for a short while, and then love takes on a lot of dimensions. A lot of people feel unless there's this sort of romantic feeling, I'm not really in love. I once read a part of a book called The History of Love. I don't know how someone could write such a book, but in that person states the romantic feelings hardly last longer than a year. And then it's sort of a deeper and deeper companionship, you know. But a lot of people feel if I'm not feeling that feeling, I'm not really in love. Or there's dependent love. So there is love, but it's polluted by many things. And I think what we're looking for is that purity of love.
This can be a really hard thing for us because, you know, every time someone puts on the movies, there's a myth that boy meets girl, they fall in love and they live happily ever after. No one shows part 2, which is who's doing the washing. And yet also that type of love, you've talked so profoundly about body consciousness. And it's not to say that you shouldn't have a physical attraction to someone, that's okay. But the reality is at some point on the spiritual journey, we do realise that the physical form is only a gateway, isn't it? So, and that can be a hard teaching, you know, because it's the physical images of beauty, they're so pervasive in our culture now, aren't they, Charlie?
They are, Kim. And I think that, you know, so someone who is beautiful, we're attracted to. Someone who is old or not so beautiful, it's not that we're not attracted, sometimes we even are repulsed or reject. And it seems, in a strange way, often the more we're in this game of attraction, that's how much we play the game of repulsion. Hence why, I love you, you're the best person in the world, to this one, and the next week, you know, I say, I hate you, I dislike you. And this sort of polarizing, I think, when we're spiritually aware and soul consciousness, we appreciate. But I think when we get impressed by somebody, actually we're a bit deceived. What am I doing? I'm sort of stepping off my own throne of self-respect, and I'm putting you on that sort of, you know, on some pedestal in a way. And you know, we've discussed this, it's quite a deep thing, because when I sort of play this game of being impressed by someone, disgusted by others, you know, it sort of influences my relationship with God. And I find the more you feel close to God, it's all in perspective. You appreciate deeply, you respect deeply, but when you're impressed or disgusted, that's when you're taken away from your truth, and your lack of self-respect is influencing your decision-making and so on.
Charlie, I agree completely. And there's this sad, you know, there's two things that are very sad in our society, particularly in the Western countries, which is around 50% of people divorce now. So they marry in a blaze of glory, and it's like, I see the very best in you. And when the person doesn't measure up to expectations, or it becomes real work, then slowly that, as you said, that love can be replaced by the opposite. But really the person has probably not changed very much.
Exactly. And you know what, I think that's such an interesting thing, Kim, you've just mentioned, because I often think of relationships like an iceberg. Not that they're cold, but the superficiality today is the 10%'s above the water, so you see the physical, and you're attracted to the physical. And so you sort of, often people are swept off their feet, so to speak. But in any relationship, as you get to know, the 90% of the subconscious, it will start to move up. And then people are so naive as they get to know someone, they think, well, you didn't tell me you were like this. Actually, it's not them, it's me, because my superficial attraction to what is limited and temporary, which is the physical, gives way to the permanent nature of that person.
Yes.
And then that's why you get in this cycle of relationships: attraction, familiarity, repulsion. So the person, just like you said, that I fell in love with and want to marry, I don't want to know them again. And unfortunately this happens. We know how common it is today, basically everywhere.
I have a difficult question. Do you think we can love others when we're not really loving ourselves? And it sounds like the heart of it is often a lack of self-love.
Yeah. I think it is a bit possible, but mostly a sustainable loving relationship is built on a sustainable loving relationship with me. Because just like with yourself, you know your strengths and weaknesses and you sort of work with it, you understand, and you forgive yourself and you let go and you learn. You do the same. You allow people to make mistakes. You allow people to be different. And you can forgive them, and you know, because you're not so dependent on them, and therefore you're not so influenced by their moods and their ups and downs. I often feel that, you know, when you're detached, you can maintain a loving attitude because you're not so influenced by their ups and downs and their likes and dislikes and their different personality. I sometimes think, Kim, the great act of love is to accept others as they are.
Yes, yes.
But what we do often is we project, you should be like I want. You know, you should be the person that I have. You have to live up to my projection of how you should be. But that's not love to me. That's sort of, real love is acceptance, I think, of someone as they are.
So really detachment is the key. Because we all get love because it's sort of, a version of it is taught every day in every part of the planet, right? You know,
Yes.
it's so common. Everyone wants to love and be loved, you know? But detachment is like a mystery, isn't it? It's an inner mystery. And I wanted to give you an analogy and then you respond to that analogy. It's like when you're all hot with emotion, it's like a cool bath. Is that the feeling of detachment?
It is, actually. And I think once again, Kim, it keeps a perspective. You know, because when you're sort of in that hot mode, you're being deceived because your sort of emotions, I think, are deceiving you at that time. And that's where really, as I was saying right at the beginning, I think detachment protects my ability to love. It enables me to be consistently loving. And interestingly, I find the more you are detached, people will love you. Because you're sort of consistent. You know what it's like, you know, if someone's really moody, you've got no idea, you walk in the door, you've got no idea they're going to say, fantastic to see you, or they just won't speak to you and that really confuses people. I think that confuses people a lot in relationships because people go through their ups and downs. And if I'm not detached, I take it all personally. I take it very personally. And unfortunately, that's how we work today. We take everything very personally, so we build up resentment and hurt. And detachment has this amazing ability to keep a perspective, a long-term perspective. So the little aberrations in between, the little problems, you don't take so personally.
Charlie, it's almost like you said that detachment is our inoculation against getting hurt.
Perfect. That's a great description.
And I love that because it doesn't, you know, you've said it twice already. Detachment does not mean you will love less.
Yeah.
And this is again, it's like a news flash because we imagine that when we're detached, that suddenly we're these cold, sort of brittle people who have no intimacy. You're really saying the opposite. The detached person has a greater capacity for intimacy. They have a greater capacity to really sit with others and bear witness to others and to help them.
In fact, it increases your ability to love. And that's a wonder. And that's where I think sometimes we need to reflect deeply on these things because what is detachment? Detachment is just really remaining in your self-value, remaining sort of in your sense of your permanent identity and not really being absorbing So you're the detached observer, and you're not absorbing all the stuff of life that distorts your decision making and your perceptions of what's going on around you.
You know, Charlie, it makes me think that when we start to get into detachment, one of the things that could press our buttons is when someone we know well isn't detached. So can you tell me what we should do then when we see someone not being detached around us?
Yes, and Kim, let's face it, that's more common than otherwise, I would say, because, you know, what happens is when I attach my heart to how things should be or how someone should be, I build fear and insecurity into my life because I either fear losing them or I fear the outcomes, because I have a sort of an attachment to how things should be. And, you know, I really do feel that we need to understand this incredibly deeply, because the more I am naturally detached and I see other people being attached, I can sort of understand them, have a lot of mercy. It's not that I'm judging or anything, but helping them understand that if you base your life on that which is permanent, I am a soul, you are a soul, God is a soul, that's eternal. When that's the foundation of life, all the changes and things don't make you insecure. But when you're attached, so that when a person dies or a person leaves your life, it just throws me into upheaval. Yes, it will affect, but I have the building blocks of what is true and permanent, so that I'm not thrown over by change, basically. An attachment to an outcome, or an attachment to how I think things should be, how I think things should be.
Well, Charlie, on that note, I think it's that special time of our episode, and I'd like to invite all of us to get comfortable in our chairs. And Charlie, can you take us on the inner journey to love and detachment?
Let me sit quietly and begin the journey inward. I begin to let go, identifying with what I do, my role in life, my profession, my position. Then I even begin to see the image of my body. And I even begin to let go, identifying with all the labels of my body. And I'm on this sweet journey internally to my essence. That I am a peaceful soul. And when I sit in this sweet place of objectivity, and I, the soul, look through my eyes, I observe the world around me. I observe the actors in the drama. I observe the scenes of the drama, and rather than identifying with them, being affected, being influenced, I'm naturally detached. Detachment means to be very close, very loving, very respectful, but I don't identify, so I'm not so influenced. So I'm present and giving in life, but I'm not absorbing the sorrow, the criticism, and the unhappiness that is happening around me. I'm sympathetic to it. I will try to help solve problems, but I don't absorb it. This natural detachment allows me to express love. And when I connect with the divine, in the eye of my mind I see the form of God, the Supreme Soul, the Jyoti Bindu, the spark of light. And when I remember the Supreme Soul, I absorb that love. And that love naturally enables me to go beyond influences. To be loving and detached is one of the pinnacles of spirituality. Om Shanti.
Thank you, Charlie. And thank you, everyone, for being with us today. This has been a really beautiful time spent because all of us want to love. I mean, it's our birthright. It's the most natural thing in the world to say that I, the soul in this body, want to love others. But yet when things don't happen as we want, we can get so deeply distressed. And Charlie's really worked with us today to say that it's okay. The calming waters of detachment can enable us to love more fully, more completely. We can love ourselves, we can love others, and the hidden part of the puzzle, we can love God just as God loves us. This is a deeply empowering, beautiful teaching today. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, Kim.